So what does it actually take to build a legendary kingdom? One that lasts. Today, we're diving into First Chronicles, chapters 16 through 20, because they basically lay out King David's exact blueprint. We're going to break down how he built the spiritual, the divine, and the physical foundations for the entire nation of Israel.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to walk through this chapter by chapter, right alongside David. We'll start with how he sets up worship, then get into this incredible promise God makes him, see how he secures the kingdom's borders, deals with let's call it a diplomatic disaster, and then wrap up with some huge final victories. Let's jump in.
First up, chapter 16. Now, what's so fascinating is that David's plan for building a kingdom doesn't start with armies or politics. Nope, it starts right here, with creating the spiritual heartbeat of the entire nation.
In the center of that spiritual heart, it's the Ark of the Covenant. This is the ultimate symbol of God's presence on earth. David brings it into the new capital, Jerusalem, and the moment it's there, he sets up a whole system to make sure it's honored properly.
And listen, this wasn't some one-off party. David builds a formal, permanent structure for worship. He appoints the Levites as the official ministers. He puts musicians in charge, led by a guy named Asaph, to lead praise. And then, and this is key, he creates a system for continual, round-the-clock offerings and thanksgiving. Worship just became a national priority 24/7.
To kick off this whole new era, David himself breaks into a powerful psalm. It's this massive public declaration of thanks. And this line right here, it's the core of the whole thing. It becomes one of the most famous refrains in all of Israel's worship.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? For David, a strong nation starts by putting God right in the middle of everything. And get this, gratitude isn't just a feeling you have, it's an organized, intentional, and very public action. This was faith meant to be shared out loud.
Okay, so let's build on that. The spiritual heart is now beating strong. And that leads us to chapter 17, which is like the divine charter for the whole kingdom. This is where David gets his mission and a promise that is just going to change, everything.
This is where we get a total plot twist. David's living in this beautiful palace, and he feels bad that the Ark of God is just in a tent, so he decides, I'm going to build God a magnificent house, a temple. But God, through the prophet Nathan, comes back and says, actually, David, you're not going to build me a house. I'm going to build you a house. And he's talking about a dynasty, a royal line that will last forever.
This mind-blowing promise is what we call the Davidic covenant. It's this foundational, totally unconditional agreement that becomes a central pillar for the rest of the Bible. All future hope for Messiah is tied right back to this moment. And this verse just captures the insane scale of it all. Look at the language here. Forever. Forevermore. This goes way beyond David's son, Solomon. This promise is eternal. It's bigger than one person, bigger than the physical nation of Israel. It's cosmic.
The lessons here are just profound, right? It shows that even our best, most well-intentioned plans are still under God's much bigger purpose. And the generosity is off the charts. David offers a building, and God says, how about an eternal kingdom instead? And David's response? He's not bummed out that his project got canceled. He's just floored, completely humbled, and full of gratitude.
All right, so we've got the spiritual heart and the divine promise. Now, in chapter 18, we get to see the hands of the kingdom go to work. It's time to physically secure the borders and establish real power in the region.
This chapter is basically a highlight reel of David's military campaigns. He just systematically takes down all the surrounding threats, the Philistines, Moab, the Syrians, Edom, one by one. But you notice the pattern here, right? He defeats them, they become servants and pay tribute, and all the spoils, all the loot gets dedicated right back to God.
The text is super clear about why David was so successful. It keeps repeating this phrase, the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. His victories weren't for his own glory. They were about securing the nation and dedicating the resources for the future temple. And back home, he wasn't a tyrant. He was establishing justice for all his people.
But, as we all know, peace can be pretty fragile. So in chapter 19, we get to see how this brand new, stable kingdom gets tested. All because a simple act of kindness gets twisted in a really, really dangerous way.
The way this escalates is just wild. It starts with a standard diplomatic gesture. David sends condolences to the new king of Ammon. But the new king's advisors are paranoid, and they convince him that David's men are spies. So the king publicly humiliates them, a massive insult in that culture. And instead of apologizing, the Ammonites panic and hire a huge mercenary army. Just like that, from a single piece of bad advice, Israel is facing a giant two-front war. This whole chapter really puts you in the shoes of a leader. What do you do? I mean, how do you respond when you reach out in peace and get publicly shamed in return? It's a huge test of leadership, strength, and wisdom.
The lessons here are pretty stark. It shows how destructive suspicion and paranoia can be. They can turn a potential friend into a bitter enemy in an instant. We also see incredible leadership from David's general Joab, who rallies the troops under immense pressure. And in the end, the Ammonites' decision to choose dishonor over diplomacy leads directly to their own defeat.
Okay, let's bring it home with the final piece of this blueprint. Chapter 20 wraps up that war with Ammon and then gives us these incredible, almost mythological stories of David's men taking down the last of the giants.
First things first, the war that started with that foolish insult finally ends. Joab, David's general, lays siege to the Ammonite capital, Rabbah, and conquers it. David then comes to personally claim the victory, taking the king's massive, heavy gold crown. This is him solidifying his rule over the entire area.
Then the story pivots to the Philistines. The writer gives us this list of one-on-one showdowns where David's best warriors defeat the last of the so-called giants, including, get this, Goliath's brother. It feels like this symbolic final act, wiping out these legendary, larger-than-life enemies for good. So, the big lesson in this last chapter is really about good leadership and teamwork. David delegates to his general, Joab. He trusts his people to get the job done. The whole defeating giants thing is obviously symbolic too. It shows that no challenge is too big. And I love how the text ends it. They fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants. It was a total team effort.
So when you tie it all together, what do you get? You get the complete blueprint for David's kingdom. It started with the spiritual heart, that organized, constant worship. It was backed by a divine promise, that eternal covenant. And it was built by physical hands, through decisive, unified action. Heart, promise, hands. And that really leaves us with one last thing to think about. David's ancient model for building a lasting kingdom: worship, promise, and action. It's a pretty powerful framework. It kind of makes you wonder, right? What's the blueprint guiding the legacies that we're trying to build in our own lives today?